Is going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Week 4 edition of Addy's Action, where I will be taking a look at this Week 4 NFL main slate with a bit more of a tournament approach in mind. So the plays that I'm going to recommend in this video are a bit more suited towards GPPs, although, as you'll see in my lineup breakdown, which I'll do in a few seconds, you can definitely use these plays in cash as well. They're not going to be completely off the wall picks. I could give you a couple of those if you guys so choose, but I want these plays to be a bit more like relevant, not just total shots in the dark. I want them to have some cash game playability as well. So they're not going to be overly tournament, but a little bit more on the GPP side, a little bit contrarian thinking in this video. So with that being said, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so right here at ReallyAddy. Yeah, you can just keep up to date with my tweets when I post a video, when I talk about NFL players as inactives come out. I'll give away a few of my takes on here. So definitely a good follow if you're interested in that. And then let's go ahead and break down last week's lineup. So this was the team I played last week. This is in the 3-3-3 Wildcat. And yeah, so as you can see, last week, I talked about Jameis Winston on Addy's Action. Mike Evans was the cover boy. Both these guys made the lineup at combined almost 20% owned. Mike Evans came in at around 12%. Jameis was sub 10%, which was to be expected with the way ownership was shaping up that week. But they were just in such a monster spot versus the Giants, as you see with, everyone was talking about this Giants-Redskins matchup this week. It was pretty much the same thing last week. Mike Evans, Jameis Winston ran it back with Evan Ingram. David Johnson, I mentioned him on the video. He made the lineup. He scored a touchdown. All in all, a pretty good week. I had a little bit of a regret not going with I had Kyle Allen and Keenan Allen here. The Allens versus Jameis Winston and Chris Carson. And I was deciding on that up until the late games locked. But I ended up going with Jameis and Chris Carson. Made, obviously, the wrong decision there with Keenan Allen going berserk. That was just a bad fade on my behalf, but still lucky enough to cash in the second tier of this tournament. Swept the cash game, swept the head-to-head. So it was a really awesome week, and looking forward to doing that again this week with y'all. So last thing on that note, if you guys do want to check out our product, you can go ahead, lockcfs.com, click on season passes. We discounted both our NFL and college football passes to $99 for the rest of the season. Christian and I don't really tout this as much as we should. We don't really tweet about I don't even think we send a tweet out about halving our prices. But we just figure we're trying to build more of a community for NFL season. Not so much here to charge you guys the absolute max. So $99, you get in for the rest of the season. You get access to our lock sheet. It's a comprehensive breakdown of our player pool. It comes with player grades. It's color coordinated as far as cash game plays, GPP plays, value plays. All of that good stuff. And it's just a great value. You get access to us 24/7 in the private members only chat where we answer all of your questions every single week, all the way up till lock. So if you are interested in this, go ahead and hop in for $99. I think it's a great deal. And college football, I got to give a shout out to Christian. This dude hasn't lost a slate in 2 weeks. He provides the best college football content out there. I don't play college football because I'm in Colorado. You can't play college football in Colorado. And you got to check to make sure you can play it in your state. But if you can play college football in your state, you gotta read Christian's breakdowns every week. They're just like, I don't know. I think it's the best content in college football in the entire industry. So you better check that out. This dude has just been crushing it. So if you get a chance to, definitely check that out as well. Now, with all that being said, let's jump into the slate. So you guys know how I like to start this. We go over who's popping as the chalkier plays at each position, and then we talk about where I'm looking. So the top 3 owned quarterbacks right now are Patrick Mahomes versus Detroit, Daniel Jones home versus Washington, and then Russell Wilson after that. And so I think those 3 guys right there are going to get a vast amount of ownership. Last week was looking like a week where quarterback was going to be sort of tough to figure out, as far as ownership will be fairly spread out amongst multiple guys like Kyle Allen, Jameis Winston, all those guys essentially. Pat Mahomes, obviously Lamar Jackson. But this week it's looking a little bit more concentrated. It's looking like everyone is picking between one of these 3 guys. And obviously you can't go wrong with either one of them. I think I'd prefer going into this Danny Dimes and Russell Wilson sort of price tier over the Pat Mahomes tier on the road in a slow-paced matchup. It just seems like a hard, obviously it's Pat Mahomes, but it just seems like a hard matchup for him to reach his ultimate ceiling, whereas this is a total nut matchup for Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones. But the guy that's not really being talked about and really isn't going to get that much ownership relative to how good of a play he is Lamar Jackson at 6,900. So a little bit of a matchup play, but also just an opportunity-based play. I mean, let's just talk about matchup first. The Browns, actually, their defense is probably the strong suit of this team, but they're banged up this week. Morgan Burnett, questionable for this game. Denzel Ward, questionable for this game. Greedy Williams, questionable for this game. That's both starting cornerbacks and their starting strong safety. You saw them struggle without Greedy Williams and Denzel Ward last week versus the Rams. Cooper Kupp went off against them. Brandon Cooks had a good game. Robert Woods could have had an even bigger game as well. So definitely a good matchup for this Lamar Jackson and Baltimore passing offense if these guys are ruled out. I don't anticipate all of them playing. I would anticipate maybe at most 2 of them suiting up, but it's sure looking like with all 3 of them missing three straight practices this week, it definitely is shaping up like they will miss this game. And if they miss this game, then I'm all over Lamar Jackson. You saw him have a pretty horrible game last week, and he still finished with 22 DraftKings fantasy points. So it's just sort of indicative of his floor. It's just, I mean, rushing upside with him is as lethal as any quarterback. He's especially after that week 1 versus Miami where he didn't really have to run. After that, he's shown off his legs. Average, I think, around 60 yards per game on the ground, which is just locking yourself into a rushing touchdown essentially from your quarterback. 6 points, and obviously he can actually score a rushing touchdown as we saw last week with that 9-yard scramble that he scored. So love Lamar Jackson at the ownership that he's getting, and I love pairing him with a wide receiver that I think you guys are going to know who I'm going to talk about. But before we get there, let's go ahead and move over to running back. So running back's a real interesting week. It's a real interesting position this week because the ownership, again, this, you know how I mentioned last week was probably the best NFL slate I've ever seen. This one, not so much, but it's still an awesome NFL slate. I mean, every NFL slate is so fun to play. But this week, the ownership is definitely more condensed. 3 of the 4 highest owned players outside of Keenan Allen being the highest owned. The other 3 are running backs. That's Eckler, McCaffrey, and Wayne Gallman. All 3 of them make a ton of sense. Obviously, McCaffrey, the highest price running back. Eckler up there as well at 8K, and then Wayne Gallman, a pretty big value as a three down back at 4.6K. All of them make a lot of sense. After that, we got guys like Kerryon Johnson, Marlon Mack, both generating a healthy amount of ownership. Definitely like Marlon Mack there, and Kerryon Johnson as well. If you do believe that Detroit can keep this game competitive, which I think they can in this spot. Definitely setting up as a trap game for Kansas City, but it's always, kind of scary to say that with the way that offense runs. But another guy that is just not being talked about on this slate, despite having a 3-down role, massive pass game usage, and high touchdown equity as the goal line back, is David Johnson again this week. I mean, his price just hasn't moved since last week. He's still 6.8K. On FanDuel, he's even a bigger bargain at, where is he? He's below Phillip Lindsay on this site at 6.8K. Below Chris Carson, below Derrick Henry, below Nick Chubb, all these guys. He should be priced above them. It's pretty simple. I mean, this guy, he set a season high in snaps last week, 87%, and he ran over 40 routes, which is just like, I feel like I have to repeat that. This man ran 46 routes versus the Panthers. That's your running back. Kyler Murray, we know how much this Arizona offense likes to pass the ball. This has check down city written all over it for David Johnson. He's game script proof. So if they do fall behind, which, Vegas odds would dictate that Seattle's around a 7-point favorite, I believe, or 5-point favorite, excuse me. So if they do fall behind, that's fine because David Johnson's going to rack up the catches. You saw him with 7 targets in 2 weeks. 7 targets last week, 7 targets week 1, sandwiched between that week where he hurt his wrist and missed a lot of the game. But true 3-down workhorse back. If they do take the lead, he's going to get fed. Seattle's a tough matchup. They're only allowing less than 4 yards per carry on the ground, but you're not really taking him for, breaking off big chunk runs. It's just not how this Arizona offense plays. You're really viewing him almost as a wide receiver with He's going to get 12, 13 carries. He's going to get, 6, 7, 8 targets, potential for a 10-target game. If Kyler Murray just locks onto him as his check down, and he's going to give you all the goal line work as well. So if they do get down to the 1-2 yard line, a pass interference in the end zone, he's going to have the highest touchdown equity on this team, outside of maybe a Larry Fitzgerald little bubble screen that they like to run in the goal line as well. But just love getting David Johnson here at 6.8K. I think it's a very safe running back play on this slate. That's going to come in very low owned as well. So let's move on to wide receiver. Wide receiver, another position where ownership is condensed. I mean, people have their takes and they're riding with them. Obviously, Keenan Allen, the highest owned player on the slate. I'm not going to act like he's not a, stone nuts play. Every other pass catcher on this team is out. The Miami slot cornerback is out. So he's going up against a backup cornerback, and he gets, I think, almost 40% of Phillip Rivers' targets. Leads the league in weighted opportunity rating. Not going to. I mean, if you want to know more about why Keenan Allen's a smash play, then watch Christian's video. He talks about him as he goes over a bit more of the chalkier options. So smash play, obviously, no one's disputing that. But the guy I like a lot. Outside of that, the other guys that are coming highly owned: Tyler Lockett at Arizona, Christian Kirk home to Seattle, Cooper Kupp home to Tampa Bay. Julio Jones, Sammy Watkins, and this guy. So this guy's coming in right around the 8th highest owned wide receiver. So definitely not the most off the wall play. He will be lower owned on DraftKings than he will be on FanDuel. FanDuel, he's just way too cheap, so he's going to be like probably the chalk over there. But I just love this stack in tournaments and in cash, and that's Lamar Jackson to Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. I mean, there's a lot to say about him. This guy is 3rd in the league in air yards. He's 2nd in the league in air yards over the past 2 weeks. His weighted opportunity rating is out of this world. Let me see if I can pull it up for you guys. I hope I have it up. Yeah, I got it up. So his weighted opportunity rating is, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8th in the league. And he's 5.9K on DraftKings and 5.7 or something on some ridiculous salary for him on he's 5.7K on FanDuel, which is just ridiculous. I mean, he's 100 more than Paris Campbell, and he's cheaper than Mohamed Sanu, or he's the same price as Mohamed Sanu. So kind of a lock on FanDuel, but just love this matchup already. We talked about Denzel Ward being gimpy if he plays. Same with Greedy Williams, same with Morgan Burnett. If all 3 of those guys are out, he's a total smash play. If 1 or 2 of them are out, he's still a smash play. If they're all in, he's still a smash play. But definitely a bit more concerning if all 3 of their cornerback or 2 of their cornerbacks and safety do end up playing, which I just don't think they will. But you might see people in this range go with guys like Sterling Shepard, or drop down to a guy like Christian Kirk, or go up to a guy like Cooper Kupp. So you could definitely still see him come in fairly under-owned on DraftKings, not so much on FanDuel, but definitely on DraftKings. You can see him come in slightly under-owned, and I'll be all over him in cash games and tournaments. Just absolutely smash spot for him. He's going to have a massive game, like a real massive game. Week 1, his big game came on 12 snaps. He's going to have a real massive game on full snaps, getting, 10 to 13 targets and converting a few of them for long touchdowns as well. So just all over Marquise Brown in this spot. But with wide receiver, I just want to talk about a few other spots. I did mention Christian Kirk coming in as this 3rd highest owned wide receiver behind Tyler Lockett and Keenan Allen. So obvious move here is playing Larry Fitzgerald. He is 500 more, which is just like, sort of an insignificant price difference. You can move your defense around. You can move a lot of pieces around to get to him. And they're essentially in the same role. I mean, they're both high upside wide receiver 2s in season long, low end wide receiver 1s. I go as far as to say Christian Kirk has 32 targets on the year. Larry Fitzgerald has 31. They're very similar in air yards. Larry Fitzgerald probably has higher touchdown equity because they do like to go to him in that red zone, like I mentioned, with that little short screen pass that they run that he scored on versus Carolina as well. So if everyone's going to play Christian Kirk and he's going to come in 3-4 times more owned than Larry Fitzgerald, then I'm clicking in Larry Fitzgerald, no questions asked. It's not even a question at that point. They're the exact same play. I'll play the guy that's a quarter owned than the other one. So That's a fairly easy tournament pivot as well. And then let's talk about these high price guys. So I know I mentioned Keenan Allen. He's going to be the chalkiest of the chalk here at 7.6K. Everyone is going to play him, and rightfully so. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to keep talking about him, but two guys to look at if you do want to pivot off of Keenan Allen. It would be a very smart move to pivot off of Keenan Allen for another high-priced wide receiver. Keep that similar lineup build, but just switch the wide receivers out. In case one of these other guys outscores Keenan Allen, that will give you a massive edge on the rest of the field. Because the rest of the slate is looking fairly chalky. So if you can get that 1v1 or 2v2 with your wide receivers over him, then I think that's going to be super beneficial. Obviously, Julio Jones in play every single week, but I like both these other guys, DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham Jr., and they have some real similarities between them. DeAndre Hopkins, Odell, they're both going to get one-on-one coverage. Odell's going to get one-on-one by Marlon Humphrey, who's had a real good season to date. He's really made up for the absence of Jimmy Smith on that Baltimore secondary. And then you're going to get DeAndre Hopkins, who's matched up with James Bradbury, who's been arguably the top cornerback this season outside of maybe Stephon Gilmore. He's giving up a 28.2 passer rating to all wide receivers he's faced. But that is going to end up being one-on-one coverage versus DeAndre Hopkins. Both these guys are super physical. It's going to be a real dogfight. But this is a matchup that you've seen DeAndre Hopkins win over and over and over again, these one-on-one matchups versus top cornerback. He's just unguardable one-on-one. And his wide receiver play style really fits. He's not going to get bullied by a guy like James Bradbury, which is something that you definitely can be concerned about versus someone who maybe doesn't play as physical as DeAndre Hopkins does. And I really do think this Houston-Carolina game could definitely shoot out. You're seeing a healthy amount of reverse line movement coming in on Carolina, which I love for the sake of Kyle Allen and Christian McCaffrey, Greg Olsen, all these game stacks. You're seeing 37% of bets on Carolina, yet they dropped from +5 to +4. That's awesome. It definitely bodes well for a shootout. The over is being hit. It's up 1.5. It's crossed that 47-point threshold, which is one of those key numbers that books don't really tend to move over lightly. So 47.5, 76% of bets on the over. People are loving this over. I am as well. And if you do think this game shoots out, a guy like DeAndre Hopkins is going to come in way too low owned for being Deshaun Watson's #1 target. Odell, sort of the same situation. Baltimore is a pass funnel defense. They got one of the best run defenses in the league, and Odell is, and not one of the, and I believe they're allowing like the 9th to 10th most yards and passer rating as well. It's a tough matchup. I mean, look, Baker Mayfield struggles under pressure. We've seen him just look awful anytime he's pressured. This Cleveland offensive line is giving him no time to throw, ranking in the bottom 10 in pass protection. And this Baltimore defense blitzes at the 3rd highest rate in football, which is obviously a recipe for success for this Baltimore defense getting pressure on Baker Mayfield. But when Baker Mayfield is under pressure, he overwhelmingly targets Odell Beckham Jr. And so this is a game where you could see, Baltimore take a commanding lead, not really slow their pace down. Cleveland's going to have to ramp up their pace from being 25th overall in the league in pace of play. They're going to have to up that. And you can see a guy like Odell get peppered with, 15, 16, one of those massive spike target games. And if a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. is getting those kind of targets, then he's obviously a candidate to take one to the house like he did versus the Jets. It's just, he's the only guy in the league who can really take a 7-yard slant and house that for 93 yards and a touchdown. So definitely like both these guys because they're going to come in at microscopic ownership in comparison to Keenan Allen and as well Julio Jones. I mean, Julio Jones coming in is the 5th highest owned wide receiver. Keenan Allen by far the highest owned player on the slate, and I can't even scroll down far enough to find these other two guys. So just for that reason alone, they make for elite tournament pivots, and I would not shy away from them in GPPs at all. So let's move on to tight end and wrap it up. Tight end, again, I don't need to keep saying this, but coming in fairly chalky. Ownership is condensed to 4 guys, really. We got Travis Kelce, Evan Ingram, Darren Waller, and then down here, Will Dissly at 3.6K. I have no problem with any one of them. I've already expressed my concerns about Kansas City in a going west to east and playing in a way paced down matchup versus Detroit. But Travis Kelce is due for such a ridiculous amount of positive regression as far as touchdowns go that he makes a ton of sense. We already know Danny Dimes, Evan Ingram, that connection is lethal. Helped me out a ton last week with that 75-yard touchdown. Darren Waller versus that Indianapolis zone defense is another candidate for 15 targets, maybe even 15 catches the way this guy goes. He just commands such a huge target share from Derek Carr. And it just, kind of dominant in his own right. And then down here, Will Dissly, obviously Nick Vannett traded to Pittsburgh. He was taking, 26 snaps a game from Will Dissly. Those should all go to Will Dissly. And he's got the best possible matchup you can ask for versus Arizona, a team that's just been a total sieve versus tight ends. And Russell Wilson loves him in the red zone as well. I mean, this guy's already got 3 touchdowns on the year. One did come in garbage time, 2 came in one game. But Russell Wilson loves him in the red zone. We've seen Russell Wilson go to tight ends in the red zone consistently throughout his career. And Will Dissly just sort of that next guy. And he's probably going to be the highest owned tight end on the slate, in my guess. Right now, he's coming in 4th highest owned. My guess is he comes in at the highest owned, just the way that roster construction works out. I don't think people will have too much salary to pay up for guys like Evan Ingram and Travis Kelce. But they'll definitely have the salary to pay for a guy like Will Dissly at 3.6K. So, with that being said, I'm looking right in the middle for my GPP tight end, and that's going to be Delanie Walker at 4.8K. The big news here is that Keanu Neal is missing. He won't be in this game for Atlanta. I forgot what his injury is, but he is out for this game. He is their primary safety, he is their primary tight end defender. So without him, they're going to be missing a very, very key piece to their defense. He's sort of the, most important piece on this defense, and it just so happens that he guards tight ends as well. Delanie Walker, obviously, he's always in the top 5 in the league in routes run for tight end. He's got a good matchup versus the Atlanta zone defense that definitely will sacrifice catches over the middle for limiting the deep ball. And we know Marcus Mariota doesn't really have the tendency to go deep anyway. He likes to check it down to a guy like Delanie Walker, 9 targets last week, high touchdown equity as well. Just a real just a real safe 4.8K play. If you don't want to go up, if you don't have the salary to get up to a guy like Evan Ingram or Travis Kelce, and you don't want to bite the chalk with a guy like Will Dissly, then I think going in this mid-range with a guy like Delanie Walker, even Greg Olsen makes a ton of sense this week. I think both those guys are definitely interesting tight end pivots that I would definitely be considering if my roster construction breaks down that way. So with that all being said, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. I love making these every single week. It's literally my favorite part of the week. So if you did enjoy, please do leave a like. Please do leave a comment. You will be entered into winning that free season pass of your choice. As you guys know, we run that same giveaway every single week. All you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and you'll be entered into winning a free season pass from locksdfs.com. I highly recommend using it on NFL. If you already have an NFL membership, then maybe use it on college football, because that is just like unprecedented. I think we have the best product for that. So, yeah. So go ahead, leave a like, leave a comment. You'll be entered into that. And with that all being said, I hope you guys have an awesome week 4. Run it up and avoid those injuries. And I will see you guys here for week 5. Peace.